We have analyzed our t-test and interpreted our results. So this video is going to be about how to report the results of that test in a paper, in APA format specifically. So when you're reporting the results of an independent t-test, these are all the things that you need to include. So you need the mean and standard deviation for each group, so the cloak group and the no cloak group. You need the t statistic, the degrees of freedom, the p-value, and the effect size. And this is the format of how that needs to be written. It has to look exactly like this. This is what it looks like with all of the information put in there. So you have t, and then inside these parentheses, you have the degrees of freedom. So that was 22. And then the t statistic here, and then your p-value, and then your effect size. And you just write a brief sentence explaining the difference between the two groups. So on average, participants that wore a cloak of invisibility engaged in more acts of mischief than those not given a cloak. So they engaged in more acts of mischief, on average 5, with a standard deviation of 1.65, than those not given a cloak. So on average, the no cloak was 3.75, standard deviation was 1.91. And then you talk about the significance of the test, and then you present the format of the test results. So this difference, however, was not significant, and then there is the test results. This is a standard way to write the test results, and it's written in the same way anytime you are reporting an independent t-test. So I'll show you where all that information is coming from. So here's the means. They're from the descriptives. So remember, our no cloak group was coded as 0. So their mean was 3.75. So those not given a cloak, the mean is 3.75, and the standard deviation is 1.91. And then our mean for our cloak group was 5 with a standard deviation of 1.65, and that's written here. So you just put the mean and standard deviation in parentheses next to whichever, in the sentence, wherever you refer to that group. So those who wore a cloak, that's where you're going to put that there. And you make sure that the statistical symbols are italicized. So M is italicized and standard deviation is italicized. And then for the results of the test, you always start with the statistic that you are running. So if I was reading this, I would know that this was a t-test because of this lowercase t here. And then in parentheses next to that, you put the degrees of freedom. So you get that from the output under DF. So degrees of freedom was 22, so you put that there next to the T. And then here's where you put your actual test statistic. So T equals 1.71, I'm sorry, negative 1.71. So you get that from your output underneath the T. And then a comma and your significance test. So P, italicized, equals 0.101. So you get that from the test here. If your p-value is less than 0.05, you don't need to put p equals 0.05, you put p as less than 0.05. So if our p-value was 0.001, you can just put p less than 0.05 there. And then followed by a comma and your effect size. So an italicized D to represent Cohen's D equals negative 0.70. All of these, you can go to 2 decimal places. The p-value, you can go to 3 decimal places, unless it's less than 0.05. So that is the standardized way to report an independent t-test. So this is all the information that you need. You don't need to add any interpretation. You'll do that in the discussion section.